Well, it's another video game, movie, TV show thing, so let's talk about it. The Last of Us stars Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, and Gabriel Luna. After a global pandemic destroys civilization, a hardened survivor takes charge of a 14-year-old girl who may be humanity's last hope. So The Last of Us HBOMax series is based on the critically acclaimed PS3 game that came out in 2012, and then was remastered and released again on PS4 in 2014, and then remastered again on the PS4 and released in 2017, and then released again just recently this year, or actually last year in 2022 on the PS5. And there's a sequel too, but we're not going to get into that right now. Anyway, suffice to say, The Last of Us is a very popular series. It's been released about 15 times over the course of the past 9 or so years, and people have always raved about how great it is and how awesome the story is. Now, me myself personally, as much as I am into video games, I am a bit newer to the PlayStation ecosystem within the past couple of years, so I only just played this game about a year or so ago. And yeah, I gotta say that the story in this game was pretty good. It was very cinematic. Do I think that the game was as amazing as a lot of people had led me to believe over the past decade? Maybe not quite that amazing, but you get that a lot with real popular things that are hyped up over all this time. I did overall think it was a very solid story. So when I heard we were getting a series from HBO, I thought, well, this could be interesting. HBO has a pretty good damn track record when it comes to its series. However, on the other side of that, this is a video game property. When it comes to video game, movies, and TV shows, that track record is kind of really up and down. Look at my series I did where I reviewed every single video game movie ever made to see what I'm talking about. Also, we got another highly acclaimed, highly anticipated, and high budgeted TV series based on a video game just this past year in Halo, and I thought Halo was pretty good. I mean, definitely had its issues, but overall I did enjoy it. On the flip side of that, I totally understand everybody's complaints with it as well. So yeah, TV shows and movies still kinda, you never know what you're gonna get when it comes to these things. I hadn't planned on doing a video on The Last of Us, but after hearing all the people saying that it was so great and all this and that, I said, well, you know what, I better watch this thing. I planned on watching it, I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. So I watched the first 2 episodes to see what all the hoopla was about. I've been hearing left and right that this was the greatest video game, TV show, or movie, or property thus far, and I thought, wow, this has really got to be something. And after watching it, I gotta say, yeah, it was pretty solid, at least so far. Now wait a minute, let me explain myself. I know some of you out there are like, what? It's only just solid? You don't think it's amazing? It's great? It's the best thing ever made like everybody else? No, I don't as of yet, and that is mainly because the series isn't over. It's only 2 episodes in. I think they're gonna have like 8 to 10, so I can't really give it a definitive answer on the entire series yet because I haven't seen the damn thing. I've seen 2 episodes. So in this video today, I'm gonna tell you what I thought about the start of the series. I'm going to tell you what I think about the series thus far, what I think of these 2 episodes. And what I think of these 2 episodes is, yeah, this is a really damn good start. Pedro Pascal as Joel is like fucking perfect casting. He pretty much looks the part, he sounds the part, he is Joel from the game. No, I don't have the history with this game that a lot of people do, but what I have played of it, yeah, I totally see the guy there. He does a fantastic job as Joel. He encapsulates that kind of hardened, jaded individual who's lived through this just shit fest of the world for the past 20 years. You believe all of his pain. He seems like what a person would be who has been through all the shit that his character goes through 20 years later. He kind of has no more shits to give. The only thing he really cares about in this world at this point is his brother. That's all he's got left, and that's where the show kind of starts. We do get some pre-pandemic stuff, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen the game, but he goes through a tragedy, and then we go forward 20 years to current day when everything's just gone to shit. You know, the part of the movies and games, these post-apocalyptic things that everybody likes where everything's all dystopian. That's where most of this show is going to take place. And during that time, his brother has gone missing and he's going to look for him. He's trying to gather up the supplies so he can get out of this like demilitarized zone and go and find his brother who went on a mission that we don't fully know what that mission was yet, but we do know he had a purpose. It hasn't been explained to us as of yet, but that's where he's wanting to go. That is the backbone of the story at this point early on. Now, without ruining anything, I do want to talk about the first half of the first episode. Now, the first episode's like an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's pretty damn long. One thing I really did like that they did here was that they stayed very pure, very close to the source material, so far at least, but they also gave us a bit more. But it wasn't like a bunch of bullshit. It wasn't a bunch of stuff that you're like, why are we learning this? We get a bit more backstory. Not a ton. It's just fleshed out a bit character-wise for our main characters. And that does make the eventual tragedy, the thing that happens, the thing that jumpstarts Joel's descent into who he becomes later on, a lot more meaning, a lot more weight. There's not really anything extra we get story-wise spending with these characters. It's just more character development. If you've played the game, then you'll be very happy with this beginning piece. You get a lot more of that good stuff. And I do gotta say that the beginning part with the outbreak where everything's like really tense, and it was a very tense, great moment or moments in the game, in the beginning of the game, is done very well here. When everything starts going to shit and Joel is trying to get his daughter and his brother and they're just trying to get to safety, that's a very tense car ride. It's a very tense escape, and I really enjoyed this, and I thought they did great justice to the game in this show. Something else I think they're doing very good so far with these first 2 episodes is easing people in that know nothing about the game. You don't have to have any type of knowledge of that game series, so far at least, to understand this show. I think they're doing a very good job with that. Like I said, me myself, I have played through this game. Honestly, I haven't even beat it as of yet. I already know what happens, but I haven't beat it. But I have only played it one time, so I don't have as much like deep knowledge of this world as some people, and I totally understood what was going on here. They did a fantastic job of setting this world up for an audience that is not familiar with source material. This doesn't seem like a video game property, if you will. And yes, there have been other movies that have come in the past that were based on video games that didn't seem like they were video gamey, but a whole lot of video game adapted films up to this point have seemed like they came from a video game. You could see that movie and say, absolutely, I could see that that's where this came from. This one, no, not so much. If you didn't know that this came from a video game, you probably wouldn't guess that it did. Now, a big part of that is, I think, that the Last of Us games are extremely cinematic in nature. One could argue that the gameplay actually plays second fiddle to the storytelling in those games. And say what you will about the quality of the games as far as that's concerned, when it comes to adapting it to a visual medium such as TV or movie, it really works. Speaking of visuals, this show looks the part. It does not look cheap at all. You can tell the HBO and all their financial might is behind it. This post-apocalyptic world is very believable. Nothing looks cheap whatsoever. When they get out into the real jacked up part of the world, you absolutely believe it. There are a couple of scenes where you're like, yep, that's CGI. But for the most part, everything here looks great. Now, while I mentioned Pedro Pascal specifically, his performance is great. Everybody else, for the most part, does a pretty good job too. There are a few side characters that aren't necessarily bad. They're just kind of underdeveloped and there, but everybody is really solid. The other star of the show will be Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Not gonna admit, at first, this character I wasn't in love with as far as this show's concerned. Didn't hate her or anything, but I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about her. But as it goes on, you do learn to like her character a bit more. However, not as much as Pedro Pascal's Joel. His character just does seem a bit more natural, a bit more believable. That may be due to the acting talent of Pascal, but that's not to say that Ramsey does a bad job. She is fine here. She just doesn't shine as much as Pascal. Anna Torv also shows up as Tess, and much like Ellie, at first I wasn't sure about her character, but as it goes on, I actually did really start to enjoy her character. And that's where a lot of the characters so far, besides Pascal's Joel, do stand for me. They're fine. None of them are like blowing me away, but they all serve their purpose. They're doing a good job. I would like to shine the spotlight on Nico Parker, which plays Sarah Miller, Joel's daughter, real quick. She is great here. I really enjoyed this actress in the role, and she brought that heart and believability that you really needed from this character in that first episode. Something else they did really well, I thought, with these characters, especially in the first episode, is their accent. This takes place in Austin, Texas, and when it comes to Hollywood and the South, whenever they are portraying people there, you kind of get like this over-exaggerated like twang to everything they say. They're like, hi, my name's Joel, I'm from Austin, Texas, how you doing? You don't get that here. Yes, there is a slight southern dialect to what they're saying, and that's kind of how it is around the country. Not everybody talks like an ignorant country bumpkin. And coming from someone who does live in the South, I did appreciate the fact that they actually didn't have that over-exaggerated twang to everything that they said. Now, while I have said a whole lot of good up to this point, not everything is perfect. I will say that there's not really anything in this show that's just like god awful, but there are a few things I took note of. First off, much like I said at the top of the video, I can't really say if this show is the greatest show ever because I'm only 2 episodes in. Nobody can say that. Who knows where it's going to go from here? I mean, sure, I got kind of an idea of where we're going with it, but overall, I can't really say what the show's going to do. While it does follow the game pretty closely so far, it's not a carbon copy. And even if it did, that being said, while I did enjoy this game, I didn't think it was like the de facto be-all, end-all game of all time. I thought it was a very good game. I thought it was really solid, but I honestly, when it comes to adaptations, I want that. I want an adaptation. I want it to do something a little bit different. Don't change the game. It is a very fine line when it comes to these types of adaptations. Tell the story. Stay true to the spirit of the source material, but, you know, do something. Keep me on my toes. And this story so far has done that to a degree, such as the beginning, and we also get a flashback at one point about before the pandemic in the second episode. So far, yeah, they're doing good, and all signs do point that they're going in the right direction, that things are going to continue well, but I can't possibly sit here and say that that's the case. For all I know, next episode, everything's going to go fucking south. Take Paramount Plus's Halo series. I really enjoyed the first episode, and the second episode I thought was pretty good, but then the third episode went to absolute shit, so who knows if that's what's going to happen here or not. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say probably not. This show does seem like it's going in a little bit better level way than that show did, but still, I don't know. Now, there are a few moments in the show where it seems like it skipped over some things. You don't ever miss anything. You know what's going on, but it seems like they spent a lot of time actually adding things, giving us more character, giving us more backstory and stuff like that in some scenes, but then in other scenes, just something just happens. We come in at the tail end of something and we're kind of told what happened, and I'm like, why did that happen? There is one thing in particular, not in the very end, kind of the middle section of the first episode. There's a big event that happens, and it's like you get there in the end. Now, in the game, you experience this thing, you see what happened, and I didn't necessarily expect it to be like that big of a part of the episode, but I just expected to kind of see a little bit of this situation go down, but you don't. You just kind of get there and something's happened. It's happened, and they're like, what's going on here? What happened? And then we're told, and that does kick things off from there. It works, it's fine, we still understand, but it just seemed a bit jarring as far as the way the story had been going. It had been carefully placing everything in front of us, parsing out information in a very even-keeled way, and this part and one or two others just seems like they ran out of time and they were like, okay, move things along quickly, let's get there. There's also a reveal at the end of episode 1 that I thought was kind of slapdash. I mean, once again, it works. We get the information we need so that things can move forward, but it's kind of a big moment, and I was expecting there to be a bit more to it, but it's just kind of like, hey, yeah, here it is. There's the big thing, and you're like, that's it. Okay, moving on, I guess. Now, these weren't big complaints or anything. Like I said, we still have all the information we need to move things forward and understand what's going on. It just seemed a bit off when they spend so much time with these other parts of the story to kind of speed things along when I didn't feel like they really needed to, especially in that last reveal. Now, I will say that that's mostly just in the first episode. The second episode, we don't get as much of that. It is a much more straightforward story. It's kind of like, okay, this thing in this part of the overall story happened, and we're just going to tell you that real quick. Speaking of that second episode, this is when we get our first look at the infected, but like in the current day. We do see them a little bit in the past in the first episode, but it's not until the second episode when we really see what the infected have become, and they run into these creatures, once again, don't want to spoil anything, in a museum, and this is a great scene, and I really enjoyed these creatures. I thought they did a fantastic job of taking what was good from the game and putting it here on the show. I also thought they did a really good job of explaining to us, the viewer and the other characters, what these creatures were, what they could do, how they work, without ever really saying it. They actually used visual storytelling to do this. I thought that was great. I just wish they had done that in some other parts of the show. Show, don't tell. And for the most part, they do that. But there are a couple of parts, like I said a moment ago, where they tell, don't show. Also, for my final complaint, it's not really a complaint, it's more of just something I noticed, and this is going to seem really odd coming from me. The dialogue in this show, while it's not bad, there is one thing I really noticed about it, and it's as if the writers just learned the word fuck. Now, if you know me and my channel, you know I have quite the proclivity for the word fuck. It's a great word, I love it, I enjoy inserting it whenever I possibly can. But these writers, they inserted it whenever the hell they could, and then some. It's like these characters, all of them, say fuck everything. And I kind of get it. They live in a fucked up world, so I guess I'd fuck everything too, or at least say fuck everything. I don't know if I'd fuck everything. Everybody's pretty dirty back then. But anyway, I get why they say fuck all the time, but it is a bit jarring. It's not as if I'm offended or anything. Fuck that. I don't care about all that shit. It's just that it seems a bit forced. Everybody is fuck this, fuck that, fuck. It's like a fucking fuck fest, but not a good fuck fest. It doesn't like totally ruin the experience or anything, but it just felt a bit forced. It's almost as if they felt like they needed to add these extra fucks to give this a rating, which it's a TV show, so it doesn't get that kind of rating or whatever. But there's plenty of other stuff in this show that would give it that R rating. They didn't need to do that. I know it seems minor and it seems like I'm nitpicking, but it is honestly something I noticed throughout both episodes from beginning to end. There's just a whole lot of fuck. Not fucking, but just a whole lot of fuck. And coming from me, that's really saying something. So yeah, The Last of Us, episode 1 and 2. Pretty good so far. Like, more than pretty good. Really damn good. Is it the best video game adaptation ever made? I mean, I can't say it's not over yet, but it is a pretty damn good one, I will say that. The story's really interesting so far, the performances are all pretty good, and overall the show just looks great. They do a really good job of presenting this world to the uninitiated, and also making it to where you didn't need the source material to understand this show. There's a couple of jumpy moments in the narrative, and some of the dialogue is a little fucked, but overall this is a very good, entertaining start to a show that all signs are pointing to it being pretty good moving forward. So while I can't give it a final rating, because like I said, I haven't seen it all yet, I will say that The Last of Us, at least up to episode 2, was absolutely worth checking out. So there it is, guys, my review of episode 1 and 2 of The Last of Us. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below. Become a jarhead and get something else, some benefits to go along with that, like these guys, and possibly check out my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Silverlock and Marge G. Also check out them YouTube memberships down below. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Austin.
You trust me?
So I own all of these, but I've only really played this one, the first one on the PS3. However, I do know what happens in this one. And I'm not going to ruin anything for anybody, and as much as they are pretty much following the story to the first one with the show so far, I gotta wonder if season 2 is going to follow this one, or if maybe they're going to do something in between, or expand upon this one. I don't know, but this is a very divisive game story-wise, and some of the choices that are made for the story, even me myself, even though I haven't played the game as of yet, I'm not in love with, and I really, and as divisive as it has been, I gotta hope that maybe they'll at least push this one out for a while and don't go straight into it with season 2, because if this season ends up just being fantastic, I'm worried that if they go right into this one for the template for season 2, it might not be received as well. I mean, just look at how this one's, you know, some people talk about it's the greatest game ever, but then there's a lot of other people that don't like this one. I kind of get it, even though I haven't played it yet. Just the story, it's mainly the story. Yeah, Joel in 1, that's, you know, that's fucked up, man.